John Vietmeyer.
Here.
Mike Ratatek.
Here.
Brad Mitchell.
Here.
Steve Richardson.
Here.
Steve Struberg.
Here.
Steve Sullentrop. Mark Wessels.
Stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. First order of business, everybody have a chance to look at the minutes?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the minutes. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Minutes approved. Thank you very much. Any priority items come up since this was written?
Nope, no priority items.
All right, then let's move right into wastewater.
Yes, you have a request for payment in front of you for co-equipment. They're the ones that supplied the CCTV equipment that you approved in last month's meeting. The equipment is in the system. It's in the trailer. We installed it last week. It came in. We ran it yesterday. It runs wonderful. It's got some new features in it that we have to get used to, of course, but other than that, it ran good, and we found out that now we can, which isn't a big thing, but to me it is, we can now get onto our wireless network when we pull the trailer into the shop, and we can print our reports that we print out every time we run it right to our big printer. So now we get color pictures instead of actually really good clear color pictures instead of not so good color pictures from our old printer. So that's a plus in itself. We keep track of we keep a record of every sewer line we put the camera in, and then we report that to the DNR. So it's good to have. So, but it is working wonderfully.
Motion to pay. Second.
Motion and a second to forward this to City Council. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Approved. Moving on. Thank you very much. All right. This was an interesting one. Tell me more about this.
Well, I will hand this over to John.
Infiltration program. I think it's,
Okay, good morning, everybody. So I think it's first good to start off with a little history lesson. So, as you're probably aware, prior to essentially the 70s, the solution to pollution was dilution. Basically, what you would do is you take your black water, your house sewage, essentially, and combine that with your stormwater. I'm gonna move here. Thank you. I'm gonna move over here. Is that good, Jamie? Good, okay. So like I said, the solution to pollution was dilution prior to the 70s. You would take your black water, your house water, combine it with your storm water, and that would essentially get pumped down to the river or, end up in the river. That's just how it was done back then. So, late 70s, Clean Water Act, you actually were required to disconnect the black water from the storm water. So there was a bunch of projects done in the 70s, early 80s, downtown Washington here, where these pipes were disconnected. Pipes were then routed to the treatment plant. Pipes were then routed to the river. So stormwater would go in the river, black water would go to the treatment plant. Kind of obvious stuff. We've ran into a couple issues where we've had some connections still. I know we've removed, I think, up 3 or 4 of them in the past, like 4 or 5 years. Yep. Those things happen. You're kind of looking for a needle in a haystack. But when we find them, we immediately move on to them. The one place, though, that there's still the potential of those things is at the home. There was never a push, as you all aware, the sewer laterals are owned by the property owners. It is against city code to have your downspouts and your sump pumps hooked up to your sewer laterals. It's against city code. Sounds great. Well, how do we get in the house to actually inspect those things? We really can't, and it's really almost impossible to enforce. We've looked at some ways with the occupancy inspections. It really doesn't work very well. So what this is kind of a different way to maybe attack it. The idea is to provide an incentive rather than a enforcement, but an incentive utilizing the stormwater fund. There's approximately $3+ million, $3.5 million in the stormwater fund that we are actively trying to utilize. We're doing some slip lining with some of that money. But what this would do is it provide an incentive for the homeowner, the individual, that if they are experiencing a sewer issue, number one qualifier, you have to be experiencing an issue. It is not a proactive, it is a reactive situation. I don't think we can afford proactive. So if, for example, if Steve wanted to buy a home and his real estate agent says, hey, you can go to the city, there's a program to replace your sewer lateral. Well, if he's not experiencing an issue, why are we getting involved? You know, we can't really afford something like that. So you'd have to be experiencing an issue that causes infiltration in your sewer lateral. So what is that? Roots, a collapse, offset pipe, you know, a plethora of things. So that would be qualifier number one. Number two, you'd have to have a plumber holding a city business license would have to do a video inspection prior to show the city that there was issues. So there's just basically an inspection procedure. So issue the pipe, qualifier. You then also must rehabilitate or remove and replace the entire lateral from the home to the street. What we see a lot of in engineering is people can't really afford that. It's about $8,000 to $10,000 to do that, to replace the pipe from your house to the street or to the connection, whatever. It's pretty expensive. So we see a lot of people just doing spot repairs. So they'll literally just dig up a section, replace the section that's damaged, and not replace the whole thing. 5 years down the road, they have the same situation. Or they just replace it to the back of the curb line, and then the street remains as is, as it's always been, which doesn't really, I mean, there's risk for the property owner, but it doesn't really tackle the problem and fix it and move forward. So what this kind of did was it took that average cost, is what we kind of figured, and said, okay, if you can pay for half, the city will pick up essentially the other 40%, 50%. So it would provide $4,000 is what we're proposing the city council. If you're eligible, a $4,000 reimbursement to replace your sewer lateral to remove infiltration. In addition, to be a qualifier, you have to have the city come into your home and do an inspection to ensure that your downspouts are disconnected and your sump pump is disconnected from the sanitary. Again, 2 other qualifiers. If they are not, you will be required to disconnect them if you want to be part of the program. If you say, I don't want to be part of the program because I don't want to do that, well, so be it. Then you don't qualify. So, and there's no additional monies there available. If there is a disagreement, so for example, if we determine that you're not eligible and there's a disagreement with the property owner, you all would then be the appeals board essentially for it. So they would come to you all, they would plead their case about why we are making an incorrect assessment on the property, and then you all could override that, staff's opinion on that. Like I said, it's funded annually from the Stormwater Fund. This is budgeted, Mark, just so we know. We did put this in the budget this year out of the Stormwater Fund. And we are still working on, I know I showed you an example of kind of the checklist. I did modify this earlier this week just to make it a little more user-friendly. You have not seen that, but it's kind of irrelevant to you. It's more just paperwork. But again, the idea here is we have an infiltration inflow issue. We are aggressively attacking it in our sewer mains. That's why our slip lining project, the first payments on there, we're spending approximately $500,000. We've been doing this. That's actually still going to ramp up as the capital improvement sales tax comes into play in the next coming years. So we're solving our problems on our pipes, but it's the home that I can't tackle very effectively without some other mechanism, and that's what this is. So it's trying to solve these infiltration problems at the home. I'll give you an example. The Lafayette curb and gutter situation that we had here a couple years ago, replaced these curb and gutters, replaced the storm pipe. I found 3 sump pump connections to the sanitary on 1 block. So you think about that sump pump, when it rains, it's pumping. You got 3, I just ran some rough numbers. It takes up approximately 8 to 10% of the capacity of that sewer main on 1 block. So that's what we're trying to go after.
Got a question on, so you say if there's something in the home and it's doesn't meet code, in an older home where there's an issue in that, let's just talk about the sump pump. If the sump pump's there, I buy the house, everything's fine and dandy, is that grandfathered to building or to the owner, or what's the future of a building that has this infiltration?
Well, really,
It's not in code. Is there ever gonna be a way to,
well, that's always kind of been, it's always kind of been the gray area of this conversation of grandfathered in. I mean, you have older buildings, building code stuff, okay, not necessarily pipe stuff, but building code stuff that do not meet the current building code, but they're essentially grandfathered in because you can't necessarily afford to bring everything up to the 2015, 2021 code, basically.
Right.
So this is one of those things that we have on a checklist, but it doesn't prevent you from occupying the home. So we're trying to find out which homes have the situation to develop some other mechanism. Like I said, this is an incentive rather than enforcement. But I mean, I don't know what would it cost to disconnect. I mean, it wouldn't cost too much to disconnect a sump pump. There's other issues too. I mean, some of these downtown areas don't have good. I mean, if you connect your sump pump to a downspout that drains to the street, well, then we have a potential icing issue on the street because that thing's constantly pumping. So that's where it's important that the city gets involved, because then we go to the home, you come to us, well, what do? We work with you on trying to reduce that risk. Whether that be a infiltration trench or something else, some other kind of mechanism to do that. So to answer your question, they essentially are grandfathered in. It's not that you cannot occupy the home. We've never not granted occupancy because you had a sump pump connected to the sanitary.
yeah.
We could. I don't think that's the
Well,
right way to
I'm
go
seeing
about
that.
things.
Yeah, it could.
So, and you're aware of what happened in our subdivision a few
Yeah.
years ago. Would this have covered that? Because it was started as a root problem? and
Maybe.
And it was part of the laterals?
That situation, though, was a collapsed connection.
Okay.
It's that would be one of these ones where I don't know if I can answer that.
Okay, I'm
today.
just-
But that is very, very gray, because you have PVC pipe, which does not typically have infiltration issues. You have a construction issue that occurred, and basically a failure that occurred. That would be a very, very gray issue.
Okay.
This is more on your clay line sewers, your non-gasketed type pipes, your older infrastructure.
John, do you have any estimate how many people might utilize this in a year?
We're getting, I think over the past 3 years, we've averaged about 20 sewer lateral replacements. That might be on a little bit on the high end, but that's what we were kind of estimating when we budgeted, was 20 to 25. But keep in mind, those are spot repairs to complete replacement. So complete replacement, we're probably only getting 4 to 5 a year.
Yeah.
So you as the homeowner, I mean, you're going to be making a decision, right? You're going to be saying, okay, a spot repair is going to cost me $4,000, but I still have risk. If we're eligible for this program, now it's going to cost me $8,000, but I get a 50% boot back. Do you move forward? I mean, I don't know. To me, I would, because, kind of like the
Little things
acronym,
new.
lets you sleep at night, kind of is the
Yeah.
idea.
Right. Well, it's a baby step to start taking care of something.
Yeah, I mean,
And if it does become more utilized, then that's to our benefit.
correct, because you're treating that water and you're dealing with infiltration issues all over town.
Yeah.
You know.
How are you going to make the public aware of this? I guess it
Will-
passes. What?
Yeah, we're hoping January is the concept. That really what this does is the plumbing world. We will directly go to the plumbers,
Okay.
and they will drive this.
Yeah, they'll pass it on.
It's in their best interest.
Okay.
So,
John, I had some trouble, got a little confused, on your eligibility requirements. 6 and 7, it just seemed to me they seem to be contradictory in a way. It's saying, because, I go in sequence, so I'm sitting there thinking, okay, we're gonna let the city in, and I'm gonna make sure everything's, disconnected and not hooking up. And then it says, only if you're disconnected yep, well, I've already disconnected, so I don't know. I understand what you're saying now, and I understand what you're saying is.
yeah.
But there's something about that sequence that,
Well, 7 was added by our attorney. So,
well,
but
I understand, but I almost think it needs to be some way before or connected with 6 or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
I found those two it just seemed contradictory.
So you gotta, I mean, what, well, and I could definitely reword it, that's not an issue at all. But the idea is you have to have the inspection done to ensure your downspout. So for example, if you were already disconnected, you're eligible. You check that box. If you weren't, and you have to do the work prior to being eligible. So you're not eligible for this program unless you were 100% disconnected, okay? And then only the work that is related to the sewer. So the city's not going to pay you to disconnect your sump pump. We're going to pay you to replace the sewer lateral. I can reword that though.
Yeah, it just says disconnect, and then the next line it says.
That's the other
It's
side of
not
the
that
coin.
you're eligible or something, I don't.
You know, that one action creates.
I could do that. That's easy to
They do
do.
it down
I could definitely
downtown because it runs
work on that a little
the
bit.
road.
So, a little more background. So St. Louis County and St. Charles County have a program like this. And I believe Kevin, I think, looked into this many, many years ago, where you would essentially pay an extra dollar amount, just say $1, I just pick a number, $1 a month, basically. And that would go to like a self-insurance fund. So when your sewer lateral would collapse, then you'd go to the city and they would kick in some money. Well, that's what we started with this. And the problem with that is that I see is when you have a newer home, why would you be forced to get into a self-insurance fund where your risk is essentially zero?
Yeah.
You're essentially subsidizing everyone else.
Yeah.
So that's one issue with it. That's why we didn't like that so much. The other issue is when I talked to Mark Piontek, since we are not a charter county, charter form of government county, we cannot be eligible for something like this. We get a lot of questions, people coming out of St. Louis, St. Charles County that are moving out this way now. Well, do you guys have a sewer lateral program? We do not. Well, then they get pretty upset with us. Well, I can't. The law doesn't even allow me to do it. So what this program is a way to have something similar, but go about it in a different way, because the public is actually getting benefit. That's the thing. That's the key, that the taxpayer's getting benefit by putting money into private infrastructure. So just so you know, that little history there.
Yeah. I like it. It's a good start. I mean, like you say, you've been working on the infrastructure. We got to take that next step, and if people take advantage of it, that's good, one at a time.
Yeah.
Everything ends up in our system.
And the money's not coming out of your budget.
That's right.
That's a fact. Well, I'll tell you, yep, it is not coming out of
I was avoiding saying that.
wastewater.
So what do you need from us?
I think what I need is just
Endorsement?
an endorsement or approval to move it to council, maybe, something like that.
I move we endorse it.
Second?
Moved and seconded to endorse this and pass it on, pass our endorsement on to the council. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved.
It's a big deal.
We're behind it.
Oh, sorry, the last thing, only residential customers.
Yeah,
It's in there, but I forgot to mention that.
I see that. All right. Moving on to water. Whoop, another bill to pay.
Yeah, and that really is wastewater, but that's okay. We'll,
Oh, that's right, it is wastewater.
it skipped a line.
Okay.
That's okay.
All right.
That's all right.
In situ farm.
This pay request is for the actual first step that In Situ Form started, which was the televising of the lines to see to verify what sizes we had and all the other stuff. That was completed a couple months ago. I held off on bringing it to the board last month because you guys were pretty heavy loaded last month, so I moved it to this month. But anyway, that is all completed, and they have moved on to while I'm here, they've moved on to the slip lining. I haven't got a report yet on the percentage of what they're done, but I would say roughly, they're probably sitting at about 75% done. I think pretty close to that, somewhere around there. They're not here this week. I think they should be coming back next week. Short week, it's kind of hard to move equipment. But doing a good job. We've only had, Carrie, 2 issues, I think. They were small ones. Service lateral issues that In Situ Form took care of. The one, and the other one was not the city's. It was actually a service lateral with roots in it, infiltration, this thing we're talking about. But everything's moving good on that. And
What is our budget? This is part of what we're going to spend. What is our What are we planning on spending?
50
The bill's 49.
for the total.
For the total this year, I'm looking at the long term, it's 500,000,
Yeah, something like that,
Yeah.
yeah.
but that's over the next 5 years.
No, that's this year,
That's this year.
yes. Partial out of stormwater and partial out of wastewater. That's our combination of funding that we're doing.
Yeah, so what we did was we took last year's dollar number that we had budgeted, combined it with this year, and then also added some stormwater funds to it to bump it up to that.
Okay.
So I think it's like I'm gonna miss this, but I think it's like 180 is what we typically do. So 2 years combined, 360, and then the difference was made up with the stormwater fund. That will then ramp up, not this year, but in 2023, because you'll have capital improvement sales tax money kicked in as well. So, I mean, that's gonna ramp up to, you know, 500,000-600,000 again in the next 2 years. We did a real quick projection. I'm pretty sure we could have all lines slip line by 2026, 2027,
Yeah.
which is a
If we can stay as aggressive as we are.
Huge deal.
with it.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
with the stormwater fund doing that, the
Yes.
heavy lifting.
Thank you.
And I'll make sure that our next pay request that will be coming from In Suture Form for the slip lining part, which should be a partial, that we have that total line item
Yeah,
there so that we see
just
where we're at.
curious,
where
and
we're sitting.
it was in the minutes.
Apologize for that. This was kind of a separate bill that came in for the televising and not actual slip lining part of it, so.
The
All in the same contract, but,
Contract's 544, 939.20.
okay.
Okay, thank you.
Kevin, when they're doing, like, they did that in front of my house last week one day. When they're running that, I don't know if it's smoke or steam that's blowing through there, can you find infiltration in people's laterals that way also, or is it just pulling from one manhole to the next?
It's pulling from one manhole to the next, and it is a sealed pipe while it's curing, and then they come back in and then they cut out the service laterals. So there's no access for that. And smoking or any kind of testing of service laterals, really have to be, if you want to do that, you have to focus that through the dry months because you want the ground to be dry. Because if, like now, if you go out and try and smoke test now, the ground's wet enough, it'll actually seal up any crack. You won't see any smoke come out of the ground. We've tried it many times in the fall and the spring and this winter, and it just doesn't do any good. I mean, we'll get smoke coming out of people's houses if they have their downspouts tied to it, but you won't see it coming out of the ground where there may have a crack in their line. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a complete sealed system, and then they come back after it cures and cut out the.
So do we need a motion then to pass this?
Let's have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Send the bill on, thank you very much. Oops, another bill. Let's see. Worldwide Industry, oh, this is for the
This is for Clay Street?
Clay Street, yeah.
Yes, they are 90% done with Clay Street, I guess I should say. The mixing system that is going into Clay Street, it's like everything else we seem to try and purchase anymore, is on back order with an indefinite date of delivery. So what we did was we went ahead, the tank is completely painted inside and out. It looks really good. They did a really good job doing it. So there's water in the tank. We have it 70, probably about 80% full. We're taking a sample off it today. If we get a good result from that sample tomorrow morning, we'll put it back online. That's the steps we do. We have to fill it with water. It's been disinfected. We'll pull a sample. If it comes back negative of any bacteriological issues, it'll go online. If it does come back with bacteriological issues, we'll have to readdress that, which means just adding more chlorine and letting it sit a little longer. So hopefully everything works out and we're back online tomorrow. We will have to take that tank back down offline when the mixing system comes in so that they can install the mixing system. But I have absolutely no timeline of when that's going to happen. What that does is that takes, right now the way the tank fills, there is a pipe that sticks out of the ground about 18 inches. And that's where the water comes into the tank and it just flows in and then the water goes up. And so you're filling the tank from the bottom up. Well, our system, because it's a pressure system by tanks, it's an elevated system, 50% of the water in the top is never used. Because while, like today, our wells are running, so everybody's drinking deep well water. when the system shuts off completely at about 1, from about 1 to 2, all the wells shut off, and then the tanks will maintain that pressure to a certain point, and then the wells kick back on when it gets there. Well, that water that's in the top just moves up and down. What the mixing system does is it takes that water from filling at 18 inches, it takes it about, that one will be about 45 feet high, and it'll actually disperse it out in a fan pattern, in which causes it to mix, so.
So it's kind of like in a lake where you don't have a turnover. So basically you're trying to turn the water over to a degree.
We're constantly mixing the water with the mixer and not letting the tank turn over, because water tanks will turn over just like a pond or a lake will. So you have all the water at the bottom, which is cool. Water at the top gets hot, and that water from the top will roll over. And Washington's always been very lucky. We have great water, and I got a great crew making sure that we keep the water safe, and it's as good as it can be. We've never had an issue, but there has been communities that water at the top has turned over, and it's caused bacteriological problems throughout the system. But we've been pretty lucky with that.
Get ahead of it.
Yeah, so anyway, once Clay Street has its mixer, then all 3 tanks will have a mixing system in them. We added a mixing system to Crestview when we did that one, doing the same thing. It's now taking the water to the top of the bowl, and so the Crestview is basically rolling all the time. So it's constantly spinning when the wells are running. So Clay Street will be kind of a mixer this way. It's kind of hard. You have to see it's really neat when they do that. The design of it, they show you the temperature changes and everything. It's kind of neat. But anyway, so Steve might have seen something like that before. But no. But anyway, so that's where we're at. Like I said, we're about 90% done. So I'm just asking for the partial payment of what they have completed.
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded, all in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Passed, thank you. All right. Regional welding trailer for the skid steer.
Yes,
Okay.
this is the trailer that's gonna actually haul the new skid steer that you guys allowed us to purchase last month. Again, I kinda held off on this one because, like I said, last month was pretty heavy loaded. Region Welding is the company that builds 98% of all the city trailers, and they do, they're a trailer building company. So that's why we're using Region. Reached out to a couple other manufacturers that never got anything back from. So we're moving forward with Region, asking for your approval to move forward with Region.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved, thank you very much. Other business, old business? Anything else on your mind, Kevin?
I hate to say no, but no, everything. But I know I probably say it every month, but everything's going pretty good. We're transitioning into the winter months now, so we. Oh, there is one thing I guess I could bring up on the water side. We have a water line that feeds the sand plant down in the east end of town that is continually breaking. Continually. We had 2 breaks in, 2 weeks? Yeah, past 2 Fridays, we've had 2 breaks. One was a minor one, a hole in the pipe. The other one was a 10-foot split. It's caused by water hammer. We know that. So anyway, the way we're going to fix that is from our Meadow Lake Farms project, we have about, 450 feet? 450 feet of HDPE pipe that we have left over from the project. So we are going to fuse that together down there, and we're going to install that in the stretch of where we're having the water main breaks and replace the PVC line with the HDPE line. HDPE pipe has a tendency, and it's been seen, that it can expand a little bit with water hammer. So we're hoping that will alleviate this ongoing problem we have down there. So anyway, we're going to utilize some material that we have left over from another project on this project to hopefully alleviate the water breaking, the water lines breaking continuously. So anyway, that's a good thing.
That's a good thing.
It's a good thing.
Right, it's making good use of what.
And it was actually their idea, so.
All right.
Yep.
There-
So. Water hammer is when you Well, I can use it for people that have it at their homes. It's pretty easy to explain. When you turn on your water faucet and you got water flowing out of it and you shut your water faucet, that's an instant stop of water. So all this water flowing this way will stop, and then it reverberates backwards. That's why you can hear, if you shut a water off, you hear your pipe in your house, if it's not attached, it'll try to go clunk. That's water hammer. It's causing that backwards motion, going backwards, creating that. What happens in our system is, use a fire hydrant example. Let's say that there's a fireman out there and they're fighting a fire and he's all worked up and he just cranks that fire hydrant down closed. That shoe will actually, at the bottom, the fire hydrant works. When you open it, it pushes the valve down. When it closes, it pushes the valve up. So when it gets to a certain point, the water pressure itself closes that valve. So if you're doing it too fast, the same thing will happen. It'll hammer up, and then it causes the same thing. Pressure will reverberate back out, and if there's a weak spot, you get a water break. Down there, we have a situation where I think it's just the volume of water being used and then stopping, so the water will flow, and then the system has it stop, and it's going back out, and it's taking its path down to the dead end line of the water line and causing it to break. We could put in a what they call a blow-off valve for that, but then you got a big vault you got to put in. You got to maintain it all the time. You have to have the water has to be able to release out of it. So you've always got this. It becomes a nightmare. So we think that this HDPE pipe will help because it can expand and contract a little bit and absorb some of that.
Well, it'd be
Plus, the wall of it is about 1.25 inches thick, so it's like 9 times thicker than PVC pipe. So it's more resilient to that. So we're going to lug everything together so that our connection points, we don't have anything that can give there either. So
good.
anyway, I just thought to me that was a great idea these guys had, and we're actually going to start that hopefully next week.
The case where you don't
If I can
throw
get the
away
equipment.
extra junk.
There you go. So anyway, that is water hammer, Mark.
Anything else, other discussion? John, anything else for us to work on? We want to stay busy. Our next meeting is scheduled for December 28th. Take a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor to adjourn? Aye.
Aye.
Meeting
Good
adjourned.
Thanksgiving.
Happy
Yes, you guys too.
Thanksgiving. Thank you.
An hour.
Yeah,